Has there ever been a weapon in Destiny history where the weapon has just gotten continuously better and better and better over time, as if Father Time just does not exist and the laws do not apply to this weapon? That weapon is Outbreak Perfected. It has stood the test of time over every other behemoth this franchise has ever known, and it's just a primary weapon. Gjallarhorn, that felt like a brick. Icebreaker, that doesn't even exist in Destiny 2. Whisper, well, there's like 69 iterations, so which one are we talking about? Outbreak, on the other hand, debuted as Outbreak Prime in a raid that is unknown, through a puzzle that is unknown, and also came from an expansion that is unknown, at least according to Bungie. This is a bit about Bungie just not acknowledging that Wrath of the Machine exists, in case that wasn't obvious. Everything about Outbreak Prime was an instant fan favorite. The puzzle, how to get it, how the gun worked, the aesthetics of it. I mean, to this day, people still clamor over anything that's Siva. Fast forward to Destiny 2, and now we have Outbreak Perfected, debuting in another puzzle-esque mechanic and a secret mission, which again instantly became a fan favorite, and the weapon as well was very good. It didn't take long for a particular fire team to figure out that Outbreak Perfected on its own was very good, but if you combined more than one copy onto it, in fact 6 copies, it went from a very good primary to an absolute behemoth of a primary. And from that point on, it became a staple into fire team inventories going into World's First races. Just in the event that you're going into a final stand and you happen to have no heavy ammo, you would all switch to Outbreak as an emergency breaking glass DPS option to finish off a boss. And that is how it stood until Into the Light, where Outbreak Perfected yet again returned, this time with the redesigned 0-hour mission, and somehow, yet again, the weapon had become better. This time it wasn't Outbreak Prime, and it wasn't just Outbreak Perfected. Now it was Outbreak Perfected Weewoo Limited Edition Funko Pop, slap you in the face with a giant brick edition. Now, not only was Outbreak fantastic in team play, but it also got a substantial buff from pulse rifles getting a global buff to damage, and they also gave you a catalyst in the form of rewind rounds, so you almost never have to reload the weapon while you're firing at a boss. So now we're just getting to silly territory, right? Surely that is where the weapon stands. It's already god tier in a primary sense. What else could you possibly do, right? Then Final Shape arrives and we get Prismatic. And wouldn't you know it, kinetic-based weapons can charge Prismatic for both your light and darkness meter, as well as Outbreak already juicing the hell out of your super bar as it did previously. And what does that formula give you? It gives you Prismatic Perfected. Outbreak allows you to build your Prismatic meter in a comically short amount of time. And not only that, unlike most primaries in the game, Outbreak actually becomes stronger and stronger as the game difficulty progresses further and further. So the higher you get in the difficulty tier, the better this weapon becomes. You get this weird dynamic where enemies become more spongy, but you also just shred through them with multiple outbreaks, and at the same time gain a ton of energy because of this. And then you take a concept like Prismatic, where you get to throw unlimited amounts of grenades and melees while you're in this state, and you also get bonus damage resist and bonus weapon damage, and you just create an absolute monster in content like Grandmasters. So I took the metaphorical Energizer Bunny of Destiny and Outbreak and combined it with the best DPS in the game, which would be Celestial Nighthawk Hunters, mashed them together and made an ad-clearing, boss-killing machine for any Grandmaster. Let's go over what the build does, because I'm sure there's people in the comments right now mashing their keyboard telling me to stop yapping. First is our dodge. Normally people use Gamblers or Marksmen for different reasons, but I use Acrobat's dodge in this case because I can make myself radiant anytime I would need it for either a barrier stun or just outright getting more damage on a boss without having a Well of Radiance. Next is our melee. In this case, I went with Smoke Bomb because not only does it give light energy if you happen to kill something with it, but also it's a weaken effect on any enemy that I want, including bosses. For our grenade, I went with Dustfield because of dark energy properties, and you can easily stack it up with just this Dustfield, not even including Outbreak, but also it gives you a darkness debuff on an enemy, which in this case will give us more damage to our weapons through our fragments. For my aspects, I go between 3 different aspects depending on the GM that I'm doing. The first one is Stylist Executioner. Basically, I'm going to be debuffing enemies non-stop, and especially with the amount of Prismatic that I'm spamming, I would just simply grenade or melee something, and then it'll die shortly after, and Stylish will activate, making me invis in the event that there's something else around me that's not getting frozen that will be hitting me. Then the other aspect I have is Winter Shroud. Pretty simple. You just dodge your enemies, and you slow them thus causing a darkness debuff on them, and you will either freeze them, or at the very least, give a slow effect, which will give you more damage when you do hit them with your weapons. Now, if you don't want to use Winter Shroud, which is totally fine, my other option is Ascension. Simply put, Ascension gives you light energy, and also if you're doing a Nightfall where there's a long pathway to go from one encounter to another, you just activate Ascension, you get amplified, and you get there faster. Now, as for fragments, it depends which aspects you end up picking, because you will either have 5 fragments or 6 fragments available to you. I'm just going to read off 6 in the event that you go with that choice, and also you can go with whatever fragments you'd like. This is just my personal preference. These are not like absolutely guaranteed set in stone, although some of them are pretty damn good and should not be taken off. So, going from left to right, we're starting with Facet of Courage. Your Arc, Solar, and Void abilities deal increased damage to targets afflicted with darkness debuffs. So, our Dust Field, our Prismatic Grenade, etc. This includes getting damage off with your Celestial Nighthawk. Next, we have Facet of Protection. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. You should absolutely have this on. There's honestly no reason to not have this on, especially in a Grandmaster. Next is Facet of Ruin. Not too common, I would say, but this increases the size and the damage of the burst when you either shatter a stasis crystal or a frozen target, and also it increases the area of effect for solar ignitions, so your Prismatic Grenade or the new artifact mod that lets you ignite enemies easier. After that is Facet of Dawn. Powered melee hits against targets make you radiant. So in this case, you would throw your smoke bomb, potentially blinding them if they're a low-rank enemy. You also weaken them with the smoke bomb so they take more damage, and radiant makes you do more damage on top of that. Now, these last two are a bit of a tag team, but depending on the aspects, you can only pick one of those, so decide which one is more favored to you. But the first one here is Facet of Sacrifice. While you have an Arc, Solar, or Void buff, ability final blows grant bonus Darkness Transcendent energy. And then the last one is Facet of Devotion. Defeating targets that are afflicted with stasis or shred debuffs grants you bonus Light Transcendent energy. So if you struggle with Darkness Transcendent energy a little bit more, then you go with Sacrifice. And if you struggle a little bit more with Light Transcendent energy, then you go with Devotion. Or you just want to set up where you get 6 fragments and then you're done. As for your loadout, it'll slightly depend on which week it is, depending on surges, and then of course what GM you happen to be doing, because some of them have Unstop Barrier, others have Unstop Overload, or some of them can have Barrier Overload. So it kind of just depends a little bit, but overall, you're always going to run Outbreak Perfected because it's insane. For your artifact, the 4th column is your best friend. Just ignore what I have on because this is my witness setup. In the 4th column, you have things like Counter Energy, where you're stunning a bunch of champions. You gain energy into your least charged ability. Then you have Void... How do you pronounce that? Defeating weakened targets provides a small Void Overshield. Overshield's still an Overshield. Radiant Orbs. When you pick up an orb, it makes you Radiant for free. And then Galvanic Armor, where you're Prismatic, you will then use your Ascension, if you have it on, to become Amplified, and when you're Amplified, you take reduced damage. As for mods, I'm not going to go piece by piece. I'm just going to name some crucial mods that you should have on, because it'll help you out. In your helmet, Kinetic Siphon all the way, because Outbreak Perfected is going to be by far and away your most used weapon, and you might as well make tons of orbs while using it. In your gloves, when you do have your Prisnade on, you're going to get tons of grenade kills, so you might as well have a grenade mod on to make some orbs as well. The mod I'm referring to is Firepower. Now, how many copies of Firepower you want to have on is up to you, because the more copies you have on, the lesser the cooldown is, and if you have 3 copies on, it's almost non-existent, which means you'll be making more orbs more often. In your boots, you're actually not going to go by what your heavy weapon is, you're going to go by Outbreak Perfected, which means you should have on 3 Kinetic Surge mods to make it hit like a truck on absolutely everything. And then your class item, you could just put on Powerful Attraction and Time Dilation. Dilation is straightforward, it just keeps your surges up longer, and then Powerful Attraction is for when you dodge, you will instantly pick up orbs around you, making you either radiant, or at the very least, getting your super up faster. And that is the build. I also cannot state enough that the more outbreaks you have going into whatever jam you're doing, the better it is. If you have 3 of them, it will truck absolutely everything, regardless of the GM. I don't care what GM you think is the hardest, like Liminality, that'll be out next week. That's supposed to be the hardest GM of all time. I guarantee you, you go in with 3 outbreaks, you will smash that Grandmaster into dust. Anyway, that's the build, that's the video. I will have a dim link below as well in case anybody wants to try it out for themselves. Sorry for the little yapping at the beginning of the video. I, want to be at least a little bit original with these build videos instead of just making the same dull points that every other person does on the planet. So hopefully a couple of people enjoyed the yapping. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video or the build, please consider subscribing today. It does help the channel grow and it is much appreciated. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can leave a like and or comment as well below. If you don't know what the comment, you can leave Pris Perfected as the comment. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.